Alright guys, today I'm going to show you guys how to take this 308 spent brass and make it into 308 match grade ammunition. Alright, so first things first, I have my reloading equipment set up on my TV stand. I actually prefer having it on my TV stand. I usually have my TV going. I usually play like a movie or watch Netflix and stuff like that. I'm not really watching, it's just kind of background noise. Reloading, as most of you guys know, is can be very dangerous, so you want to make sure that you pay attention to what you're doing. Again, I just put the movies and stuff on for kind of background white noise. I don't actually watch it. I'm reloading, but it just kind of gives me something to, I don't know, again, it just gives me white noise, I guess. Just something I like to have going on in the background. Usually it's gun related. Like for a while I've watched Top Sniper. I think I've done that for like a couple years. Again, I don't really watch it. It's just noise to keep me occupied. Sometimes I'll play music. But if you guys notice, it's on my TV stand. The reason why I do that, again, is so I can have the TV playing and have some white noise. And this is kind of the apartment life, the apartment struggle. I don't have a garage that I have full access to go ahead and have an awesome reloading setup. So I do everything in my my living room. So first things first, I actually tumble my brass before I get started. That's the first step that I do. I get the dirty brass, throw it in there, tumble it for about an hour, and then that way it keeps my equipment clean. If you notice, a lot of guys that they reload, their mat, their lube mat, is usually pretty grimy. That's because they roll dirty brass, and same thing with their dyes. They usually run dirty brass through their equipment. The way I see it is, I like to just keep them clean, keep my equipment clean, take care of my equipment takes care of me. That's just my philosophy, I guess. You don't have to tumble before you do this, but it will keep all your equipment and make the process a lot easier. So again, first things first, I'm a stainless steel media guy. So I put 2 drops of soap, just a little bit of Lemmy Shine. I don't go too anal about the recipe of the tumbling. And you get your clean brass. So your brass is now clean for the most part. You still got a primer in there, so you got to clean out the primer pocket. I'm going to do another tumble after this. But again, I just tumble it that way. It keeps my mat clean and all my other stuff. So basically I just throw about 5 on there. 4 or 5, doesn't really matter. Just about half the mat. And then before I do that, I get lube, or CBS case lube. Highly recommended from a lot of people. Honestly, that's the only lube I've ever used. That's what came with my kit. A little bit goes a long way. If you guys have other lubes, I'm sure they work just as well. Basically, I already got some on there, but this is basically a sponge. What I do is I just squeeze it out just a little. You want to make sure you get a decent coat on there, but you don't want to overdo it. You don't want too much lube. It's actually bad for your cases. And just do an S pattern back and forth. Make sure I get lube throughout, and then I just kind of rub it in with my finger. And then after that, I put them on there, and then I go ahead and roll them back and forth. And that's pretty much how you lube the cases. So again, that's the first step that I do. Pretty much I stainless steel tumble, and then that cleans the brass. And then after the brass is clean, I'll go ahead and lube it real quick. Again, you don't want to put too much, but you want to make sure there's enough lube on there to not get it stuck in the die. I've tried doing it dry, and I've tried doing it with light lube. With my 223, it usually rips the case head off. So again, you want a decent amount, but you don't want too much. Let me see if I can focus up. You don't want too much because it will dent the case. It's actually bad for it. You just want, you'll feel it. It's a little greasy. It's not slimy. It's just smooth, if that makes any sense. Again, you don't want to get it too hard. You don't want to push down too hard. Just roll it back and forth just a little bit. And then that's basically how I get them, my cases lubed. And then I'll go ahead and readjust the camera and show you guys how I get my Alright, now that I got my cases lubed, how I set up my depriming and resizing die. These are for semi-automatic, so I do the full-length seating die. If you guys are doing once-fired brass, you just do the neck. If you fired it in that rifle, if not, if you're going to do it for the first time, you need to use the full-length sizing die. Pretty much how you get that set up is with these redding dies, all dies are going to be different, but for the most part, you just want about maybe a 1/4 inch of the depriming pin to stick out. You can always adjust that later. I usually end up doing it. But what you want to do first is go ahead and raise the ram all the way to the top stroke, and then go ahead and screw in your depriming die all the way down until it makes contact with the chuck. So I'll go ahead and go down. So right there I made contact. You want to get it, you don't want to over tighten it, just enough to where it stops, and then go ahead and tighten your locking nut. Go ahead and lower the ram. Some guys like to do a 1/2 turn more. I like to leave it right where it's at, right when it makes contact with that. And what you do next is go ahead and throw your case in there. And right now it's getting bound up because it's got a pretty jacked up lip. So because it's got a resizer ball in there, so because it's got a jacked up lip, I like to run it twice and then go ahead and deprime it, and that's your deprimed and resized case. So we'll go and do another one. I got a little depriming tray. So again, go ahead and push the ram down, and that's pretty much the process for that. What I was saying earlier was, if your depriming pin doesn't pop out the primers, so say sometimes you'll get like a half ejected primer, what you do is you just screw this down a little bit more, which is the top adjustment for the not decapping, but the depriming pin. You just unscrew it just a little bit. Mine's far enough down to where it pops it out, so I don't have to worry about that. Again, you can always adjust it more. It's better to have it too shallow than too deep, because if you have it too deep and it gets smashed up, it could break off. So it's just something to be aware of. Just get it just where it's enough to pop the primer out, and you'll be good to go. So I'll just do these few, and then we'll move on to the next step. No reason to make it any longer than it needs to be. This one had a pretty messed up case mouth as well, so I'll do that twice just to round it out properly. And then with all these, so this is what I'm talking about the case mount. You can see it's got a little dent. I'm not going to focus in on it, but you guys can probably see it. And it's got a dent. It's kind of square. Actually, I'll focus in on it. Forget it. So you can see it's not round. And then what it does is go and resizes it, the entire case. So what it does is there's a ball inside, and it kind of rolls out and reshapes the mouth. And basically it brings the case back to spec after it's been fired, and goes ahead and opens the case mouth, and I can see it's like perfectly circle. But again, just because it was just a jacked up mouth, I like to run it through just one more time just to make sure it's cylindrical and where it should be. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the next step. Alright, so there we go. Check back in about an hour. Alright, so now that the tumbling is done, go and pour out the water. And then we'll get the brass out, and then we'll go ahead and dry it. Alright, so our brass is now clean. It's still a little bit wet, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to dry it off. What I like to do is I like to just throw it in a towel, kind of cover it up, beat it up a little bit in the towel to get the water droplets out of the case a little bit. Just kind of shake it. Again, just kind of beat it up a little bit until it's, I do that for a little while until it's clean, or until it's dry. Usually do it maybe 10 minutes. Again, I just do it till I'm happy, until they're pretty much dry already, but until they're dry. The main thing is you want to make sure it's dry on the inside. You want to put powder in there if it's wet. A lot of guys like to cook their brass. They throw it in the oven on a cookie sheet, and then they cook it for like an hour at a low temperature. It gets all the moisture out. I used to do that. I don't do it anymore because it's time consuming. It takes a lot of effort. It's harder than it needs to be, really. So again, I just throw it in a towel, kind of beat it up, gets it dry for the most part. I usually leave it for an hour in the sun, or I'll just leave it in the window, or shit, I'll even leave it on the floor right here. just cover it up, let the moisture kind of soak into the towel or evaporate in the sun. Again, I use stainless steel media mainly because it cleans out the primer pockets for the most part. For the sake of the video, I only cleaned it for about 45 minutes. I usually leave it in there for about an hour to 2 hours, usually about 2 hours. And it usually gets the pocket completely, but you can see there's still a little bit of grime in there. Again, I only left it in there for 45 minutes for the video. That way I can get it all done today. So because I'm loading precision stuff, I'll probably hit that with the primer pocket tool. But for the most part, usually I skip this step. Like if I'm just reloading for like desert stuff, I'm just going to shoot to the dirt or just shooting paper. If I wasn't doing precision reloading right now, I wouldn't even worry about the primer pocket. It's not really that big of a step, but if you're loading for precision, that will make a difference. So just because I'm loading for precision, I'm going to make sure that's completely clean. So we'll go ahead and get this dry, go ahead and shake it out, and then we'll move over to getting a primer in. We'll trim it, and then we'll go ahead and work on the powder. So get them dry, and then we'll go to the next step.